into today's video. And in today's video, I decided to do something a little bit different from normal. Typically, whenever I'm doing election predictions, I do potential election predictions in the future. Like I've done Andrew Yang versus Donald Trump. I've done, I think it was Kamala Harris versus Nikki Haley. But today I decided to do something different. I decided to do a Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump 2020 election prediction, like more like a what if. So this is the 2020 map. Oregon has 7 votes, Arizona has 11, Michigan still 16, all that stuff. And for Bernie Sanders running mate, I thought for a second, and I ultimately decided on Kamala Harris. There are some people that it could have been. It could have been Tammy Baldwin, could have been Amy Klobuchar, because he could have gone with like a progressive like Tammy Baldwin, Elizabeth Warren, or Sherrod Brown, or he could have gone with more moderate to get moderate support like not Tammy Baldwin, like Kamala Harris, who's more or less moderate. She's like a traditional Democrat, or like someone like Amy Klobuchar. I also considered Gretchen Whitmer. I feel like she could have been somebody he could have picked, but I ultimately just decided to settle with Kamala Harris. So I'm gonna start by labeling all of the states. Washington, Oregon would also be safe. California, Hawaii, I think would have been safe. DC, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, home state of Vermont, New York, Maine's first, and Illinois, I think would have all been safe for now. For Trump's safe states, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska's 3rd congressional district, and Nebraska at large. I think you'd probably want it safe. Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, West Virginia, or Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and that is it. Now, for all of Sanders' likely states, New Mexico, Colorado, I think would both be likely. I think that Virginia would have been likely, Minnesota would have been likely, New Hampshire would have been likely, Maine would have been likely. So, I mean, if we go look at 2020, Sanders or Biden won in Colorado by 1.5% away from a safe margin. I think that it would have been likely just because, it could have been safe. I don't think that, Sanders would probably, especially considering the fact that he would have Harris on his ticket, would probably overperform Biden among minority voters, which could help him, but I don't necessarily know that he would do well enough to, in 4 years, definitely. But in 2020, I don't necessarily know that he would be able to do well enough. I'm just going to be generous to Trump and give Bernie Colorado by a likely margin. In New Mexico, same thing. He's a fairly strong candidate. I just don't necessarily see him winning it by such a large margin. As for Minnesota, if we go look at Minnesota, Biden won it by a likely margin. I think that Sanders would definitely overperform Biden in the Rust Belt, just because he's so popular with white working class voters. I think he would do well enough in the Iron Range, in rural Minnesota. We could see him win Itasca County, or not win it, but he could do well enough there. Amy Klobuchar won it, but to be fair, she also won by insanely large margin. He could make some of these counties more competitive. He'd probably win Carlton County by a larger margin, and just do well enough overall all across the state. And then Virginia, Sanders would probably do slightly worse in Virginia. Well, I don't necessarily know, because he's less establishmentarian, which probably wouldn't help him, and he might not be a phenomenal candidate in the suburbs. I think that having Harris on his ticket, considering the fact that Trump was such a turnoff for the suburbs, would probably help him to do similarly to Biden, especially considering the fact that he'd probably do well among minority voters in the state. And then for New Hampshire, he is from the Northeast, so he could have regional advantage. But he's also popular. I think, like I said, white working class voters. He's popular among white voters in general. So I think he would probably be able to do well enough in New Hampshire. Now, for all of Trump's likely states, I think that Montana would be likely, Nebraska's first would be likely, Kansas would be likely, Missouri would be likely, Indiana would be likely, South Carolina would be likely, Alaska would be likely, and that is it. So looking at this, Montana, Trump won it by just outside of a likely margin. Bernie would just do well enough among white voters. Missouri, same thing. He would do well enough among white voters. Kansas was already likely. Once again, do better among white voters. I think he'd be strong enough among white rural voters. Same thing in Indiana. Another one of those Rust Belt states. Bernie would be popular in. South Carolina, was already likely. He'd do well enough with minority voters, and with Kamala Harris on the ticket, she's not a great candidate for minority voters. However, I think that a lot of that will change by the time that she does run, because like I said, Biden had a sketchy past with minority voters, but he still did very well with them. And then in the state of Alaska, same thing. It's probably going to be a likely state. Oh, and Nebraska's first. I mean, like, once again, Bernie popular enough among white voters. Biden lost by 15%, so you'd have to do 0.1% better than Biden. Which, I mean, like, among white voters, white rural voters, like, a lot of this, like, over here is, I think Lincoln, which he would do better among rural voters. Like, Lincoln split in half between, like, the first and second districts. But then a lot of these are white rural voters, so I think he'd do well enough among suburban voters. Like, he wouldn't do phenomenally, but he'd also overperform among white voters and be able to win it. Now, for all of Bernie's lean states, Nevada, Nebraska second, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And that is it. So, I do think that Bernie would win if you couldn't tell. Looking at this, Bernie is a very exciting candidate. He is a candidate like a lot like Trump because people perceive Trump and Bernie as radical. They are fairly far to their sides of the party. They aren't like they're not like insanely far, obviously. They're not like communists or whatever, like radicals. They're not like absolute nut jobs, but they are fairly far to their sides of their parties. So I mean, they could both be perceived as nut jobs depending on your political views, but in general, I mean, like they're not like I don't want to say they're not like far to their side because they are far to their sides of the parties, and I do have my own views on them that I'm not going to be talking about. But they are. I don't want to say radical because they're not, but they're fairly far to their sides of the aisle. Not like once again, not like communists or anything, but they're not like moderate Joe Biden, Lisa Murkowski type candidates. So they're within the realm of not perceived as like Marjorie Taylor Greene would be. Like people see her as a conspiracy theorist, and a lot of people do see Donald Trump as a conspiracy theorist for continuously talking about or peddling false claims of voter fraud. So people do see Trump, I guess, as a conspiracy theorist, but people don't see Trump as they see Marjorie Taylor Greene. People don't see Bernie as I guess like someone that would be insane. Like AOC maybe, but she's not like a Marjorie Taylor Greene of the left. She is pretty far to the left, but she's not Marjorie Taylor Greene. I guess Stalin is. I mean, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene is in no way like Stalin because Stalin was awful. But I'm going on a tangent here. They're both fairly far to their sides of their sides of the aisle. I'm just gonna say that much. And looking at this, I mean, like these candidates that are, I guess, I'm just gonna say perceived as radical. Because both are perceived as radical. These radical ideas call for radical change, and radical change brings excitement, and with excitement comes higher turnout, or like in the Rust Belt in particular, exciting candidates do very well in the Rust Belt. We look at this. That's why I think that Mike Pence would be an awful candidate for the Rust Belt. He's just not exciting. He's also kind of establishmentarian. I think Nikki Haley would do poorly because she's establishmentarian. They're both populist that are wanting change in the country that's not like Joe Biden type of change. That's not just like mild, moderate change, I guess, is the best way I'll try to put it. And a lot of these voters in western Wisconsin, in the 3rd district and parts of the 2nd district, they liked Obama. They are Democratic voters who voted for Trump because he was exciting, because they liked him. Bernie is exciting, and I think that many of these white working class voters over here that Ron Johnson even failed to win. If I have a 2016 map pulled up, yes I do. If we go look at this, even Ron Johnson, which kind of confuses me because he won by a larger margin than Trump, yet he carried Door County, but I mean like he didn't win a lot of these counties over here. And we'll go look at these. These were narrow victories for Johnson. So these are a lot of these voters over here are Democratic voters. I think that Bernie would do very, very well with them. Going on to Michigan, I think that he would actually do very well in Detroit, but I also think that he would be able to do well enough among rural white working class voters. I mean, like he's not a bad candidate for these voters. He's a very strong candidate for him, and Biden already won it by lean margins. Same in Pennsylvania, he would do very well among these working class voters. He might win Beaver County. I don't know about it though. But I mean, like, he could do well in Philadelphia and maybe in its suburbs. I don't think that Bernie is like an amazing suburban candidate, but he's also not like a horrible suburban candidate. He's just like maybe slightly below average, but he would do well enough in some of these rural counties. I'm just looking at random counties. He would probably win Century County by like 7-8%. He would probably win Erie County by pretty large margins, like 2%, maybe 3%. And overall, just do well enough among the white working class to be able to pull out a victory in Pennsylvania, by a lean margin similar to Biden's. Now, for Trump's lean states, Iowa, Ohio, Maine's second, maybe. Maine's second could be like a tilt state. It could be, or tilt area, I guess. It could be very close. I'll just give it to them lean. Texas, obviously. Florida, and I'm going to say North Carolina. So, looking at this, in Iowa, Biden lost it just outside of a lean margin. He lost it by like 8.2%, I think. So, like, or not just outside, but like a couple of points outside of a lean margin. I think that Bernie would be able to do well enough among a lot of these white working class voters up here in this northeastern chunk. There's like, for whatever reason, I was divided. I guess it just works perfectly into like congressional districts like that. It's kind of strange, but there's this congressional district up here. I think that Bernie would be able to do well enough among a lot of these white working class voters. Over here, I mean, like a lot of these counties did still shift to the right. The shifts in like Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and whatnot weren't enough. But we go look at the 2016 presidential. That's 2020 Senate. Hold up, I'll go to 2016 map up. 2016 map up. Over here, Mike, we look at this. Trump shifted so many of these counties up here to the right, and like they were fairly strong for him. Like they weren't like insane, but they were decent enough for him. But then we go look at 2012. Look at how much blue over here this is. Look at all this blue that Obama was able to carry them on, and he won the state by likely margins. I think. I believe he won by likely margins. Yeah, okay. It took me a second to do my math. 5.6%, which meant that's a pretty big margin of victory. And for it to go from 5.6% to like a what? 9.4%. That's a lot. Like that's a big shift. So I do think that a lot of these counties will flip for Bernie. I don't think that he would do tremendous with them, but I think he would do well enough. And the same thing is true for Ohio. If we go look at Ohio over here, and then we go look at Ohio in 2012. I'm just gonna go like that. We go look at Ohio in 2012. A lot of these counties up in northern Ohio, around Cleveland, and if we go look at a county map, he why did I click on that? We can just go look at it like that. He did decent among a lot of these rural counties down here. He won Montgomery County by like 3%. But then we go look at 2020 in Ohio. Look at all that red. Biden won Montgomery County by 2.1% or 2.2%, yeah. And he didn't do phenomenal up here. He did pretty poorly. So I mean, like, I think that Bernie would be able to do well enough among white working class voters. I don't think he would do like insanely well, but I think he would do well enough. And that leads us to these two final states, which I think are, I mean, obviously they're Georgia and actually I forgot to discuss North Carolina. I'll go do that briefly. North Carolina, I mean, like, Trump won it by like 1 point, or that's Martin County. Okay. Trump won it by like 1.3%. I think that Bernie would probably do well enough in rural areas to do decent, and probably do better in Charlotte. So it would be on like the line. It could be tilt. Like it could really go both ways. But these two final states, Arizona and Georgia, I am having a very hard time placing them because they could both really go either way. There are a few states I realized I forgot to discuss. I think I forgot to discuss Nevada and Nebraska second. I'm actually gonna do that briefly. Just finish everything. For Nevada, I mean, like, I'm just gonna go do it like that. That'll be easier. Nevada, I think he would probably do better among like white rural voters than, well, maybe not among white rural voters, but he would probably do similarly to Biden, and he would also do well enough in Las Vegas to do well. And then Nebraska second, I mean, like, it would probably be closer, just because he wouldn't be able to be strong enough among like a lot of those suburban voters, but he would probably be decent enough. Anyways, looking at these two states, these are, I think, really gonna. I think these two would be legitimate toss-ups because we can go look at this. Arizona, Biden won by 0.3%. And I do think that Bernie would do well enough in Phoenix. Maybe do well enough in Phoenix. He's not a great suburban candidate. Actually, well, with Harris on the ticket, I'm gonna label that tilt blue. I think that in Georgia, it will also probably be tilt blue considering the civil rights work that he did. Combined with the fact that also I think he would be decent in the suburbs. He wouldn't be like an insane candidate. We go look at the suburban shift. It was like a hard shift to the left. I think that against Trump, Biden's not an amazing suburban candidate. Biden versus McCain, Biden versus Romney, Biden versus Bush. He wouldn't be doing nearly as well as he is in the suburbs. I think a lot of the suburban shift is Trump, but Kamala Harris is also a pretty strong suburban candidate, which she's his running mate. So I feel like most people don't vote base their vote off of running mates. Obviously, if you pick someone horrible as your if you were to pick someone insane as your running mate, just absolutely nuts, then they're not gonna vote for you likely because you picked somebody insane as your running mate. But if you pick somebody for your running mate's not gonna help you tremendously. But with Harris, I think that considering the fact that Bernie's an average suburban candidate, mixed with the fact that Trump's an off one, and Harris would be his VP, I think it'd do well enough. I think we'd also do decent enough in rural Georgia to be able to do well enough. So I think it would be kind of close, but he would narrowly win it. So this is actually the 2020 map. I believe the exact same map would have happened. I also just realized I forgot to discuss Florida and Texas because I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to do that. Florida, or Texas, Bernie just wouldn't be able to be popular enough among voters in Miami-Dade. Texas, he'd probably do better in urban areas and probably do better at a lot of these areas that shifted by 55% to the left. Star County, where are you, Star County? I'm looking for it because it's just 55% to the left. Somewhere over here. Star County, right here. Biden still won it, but it shifted by insane margins. In fact, we can go look at 2016. That's the Senate again. I keep on going to the wrong thing. Actually, well, we could have looked at that, but I'm gonna go try to find it now. We go look at down here. It was a solid blue region, but whatever. Anyways, looking at this, I do think that he would be able to keep a lot of Hispanic and Latino voters and do better in urban areas. And probably make it 3%. But yeah, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe and stay tuned for my next video. I'm not quite certain what to make. I might make an Obama versus Trump hypothetical matchup in maybe 2024. Cause I'm really not certain what to make. I have no idea really what I should be filming at this point. I'm probably just gonna continue to make up fun scenarios until I have an idea for a video that I'm gonna do. So please leave some suggestions down below. I am working on a 2022 midterms Senate election night. I have a few random candidates running because this wasn't certain who to run. I have the former governor of Missouri running for the Democrats and random stuff like that. So if you have any suggestions, please leave them down below. I already have a lot of states, but I can replace them if you would like. But yeah, once again, stay tuned for my next video, and I'll see you all there. Bye.